Why should we study history when it already has happened? Is it just a waste of time to learn about events which may not directly affect us anymore? Well, we study history because we can learn from its mistakes, so that history will not repeat itself. World War One, which took place from July 28, 1914 to November 11, 1918, and World War Two, which took place from September 1st, 1939 to September 2nd, 1945, were two horrible and unimaginable major events that impacted the world in so many ways. No one would ever want to live through a period like that. So by studying and analyzing history, by looking at other people's points of views and not just ours, we answer the question that everyone is asking. Will there be a World War III?
Firstly, let us take a closer look at the causes of each of the world wars. World War I started with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary. Many Slavs in Austria-Hungary wanted to break away and join their fellow Slavs in Serbia, and this led to a Bosnian nationalist group assassinating the Archduke, as they were provided weapons by a Serbian nationalist group. Immediately, Austria-Hungary had blamed Serbia, and as Serbia did not meet all of Austria's demands, Austria had declared war on Serbia. Austria-Hungary then invaded Serbia. At the same time, Germany invaded Belgium, Luxembourg, and France. Russia attacked Germany because Russia was an ally of Serbia. Several alliances formed over the past decades were invoked, so within weeks, the major powers were at war. As all had the colonies, the conflict soon spread around the world. Rival countries tried to keep the balance of power by forming alliances. Each member in the alliance promised to protect one another in the event of a war, and this escalated after the assassination of the Duke. These events led to the deaths of 17 million people. No one nation deserves the full responsibility for the outbreak of the war. However, according to military historian Sir Max Hastings, he believes that Germany was the country who deserves most of the blame. Germany in 1914 was so powerful and could have not funded and offered any help to aid Austria in its invasion of Serbia. Besides that, he also thought that it was not sensible for Russia to have wanted to enter war in 1914, as Russia was in the middle of its rearmament program. It would have made a lot more sense if Russia entered a war 2 years later, when it eventually rearms and is ready for a war. Finally, Sir Max Hastings thought that if Germany were to be victorious and dominate the entire European continent, it could not have accommodated Britain's powerful navy and rich economy. Sir Max's view on Germany being the main starting factor of World War I could be due to the fact that he himself was a British, and he was being biased in favor of his own country, considering the fact that Germany had been one of Britain's most ruthless enemies for both World War I and World War II. However, he still provided a plausible explanation to his stand, which might very well be true.
Now moving on to the causes of World War II. Ironically, the attempt to end the First World War led to the Second, an attempt to bring about peace to end the war between Germany and the Allied powers. A peace treaty called the Treaty of Versailles was signed by both sides of the conflict. The Treaty of Versailles, despite its intent to bring about peace, was actually heavily biased against Germany. Some terms of the treaty included the War Guilt Clause, where Germany was held responsible for starting World War I; reparations, where Germany had to pay a huge sum of $33 billion as a result of the damage caused in the war; and finally, disarmament, where Germany was heavily restricted when it came to the size of their army and had only 6 naval ships with no other forms of defense, namely air force, tanks, and submarines. Germany was forced into signing this treaty, as the alternative was to be invaded by the Allies. All these unfair terms of the treaty did not bring about peace, but instead brought about hate and resentment for the Allies among the Germans, who would eventually take revenge for their losses. There was political and economic instability in Germany, combined with the bitterness over its defeat in World War I and the harsh conditions of the Treaty of Versailles. This led to the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. In the mid-1930s, Hitler began to secretly rearm Germany in direct violation of the treaty. Hitler then signed alliances with Italy and Japan to oppose the Soviet Union. Alliances such as the Axis powers consisted of Germany, Italy, and Japan, and the Central powers consisting of France, Great Britain, the US, the Soviet Union, and China. Germany invaded Poland on 1st of September 1939. 2 days later, Great Britain and France declared war on Germany, and eventually, all the alliances were invoked and the Second World War had begun. Based on an interview done by journalist Lawrence Rees, Historian Richard Overy stated that World War II was primarily caused by the consequences of World War I, which disrupted the international order. Richard Overy then mentioned in the interview that another cause was that Britain and France saw themselves as elite, representing values, and they also saw Hitler as a principal challenge to these values, which led to them being willing to take a stand in Poland against Hitler, which turned the gears for World War II.
The one thing that didn't change is the role that Germany played in causing the war and its policies. They were aggressive and found importance in gaining power. In World War I, the greatest causes were due to the fact that Germany was growing rapidly, industrially, financially, and militarily. It threatened the pallets of power in Europe that was achieved after many years of conflict. This was further intensified by what Germany has done after attaining such power. When the Kaiser, who was the highest position in Germany back then, felt threatened and insecure, turned to solve matters with military, as shown through the arms race. In World War II, there was Hitler, who was also hungry for power and wanted to make Germany great again. But at the same time, he wanted to take revenge on the countries that have hurt Germany in the past, through the Treaty of Versailles. So what are the differences in the causes of the two world wars? The main trigger event of World War I was the assassination of the Archduke of Austria, and thus triggered militarism, imperialism, nationalism, and the alliance system, as mentioned earlier, and started the First World War. However, the trigger event for World War II was economic and political instability within Germany, the harsh conditions of the Treaty of Versailles, and the rise of Hitler. These two main causes are different in the sense that World War I was triggered mostly by attempts by nations to fight for independence or to expand their empires, while World War II was mainly caused by the unfairness in trying to bring respective entities to justice after World War I, which led to the rise of Hitler, etc. We think that a World War III is highly possible. Here are a few things that historians have said could occur by case. Firstly, the use of nuclear warfare. With many major powers in the world, such as USA and Russia acquiring nuclear bombs, it can cause another world war. If a country decides at any point of time to use a nuclear bomb during a war, other countries in defense might utilize their own and the world will be eventually involved. Secondly, the presence of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, otherwise known as ISIS, has the ability to start a World War II. With their declaration of a worldwide caliphate, which is the conquest of the whole world, many countries, especially in the Middle East, are involved with them. Big countries such as USA and Russia have already joined in the fray. The mess in the Middle East has already spread to Indonesia and France. If ISIS is not stopped, we might see World War III. Thirdly, the battle for control over important areas of influence, such as Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Kuwait, Ukraine, and Georgia, are all linked to money. Major powers, such as USA and Russia, want to have possession of oil and gas to stay at the top economically. Furthermore, the enormous national debt of the USA to China is the root to even more tensions between the countries and increasing economic struggle. The interdependence of Saudi Arabia and the USA creates increasing issues in the Middle East, where people with power and land with resources are rich, and the majority of the population are poor and subjected to harsh treatment.
Based on the knowledge and research that we have gathered, we believe that the possibility of a World War III is highly because of the state-of-art technology and conflicts happening around the world today. Many nations uphold many different values, and if one nation decides to go against another nation's values, a war would be highly likely, as each nation would be willing to fight for their sovereignty, just like how France and Britain were willing to bring the fight to Hitler during World War II. There are two possible types of war. When a country decides to launch a nuclear bomb or declare war against another country, the whole world will be dragged into it eventually, and that is a conventional war. The other more likely war to occur is an ideological war. No one is competing about territory anymore, but are now fighting against terrorists such as ISIS, which first introduced the ideology of jihad to bring people to heaven. And does that not resemble Hitler saying that killing all the imperfect people like the Jews would save the perfect race of Aryans? With the current world being so tense and having such an unstable economy, with all the disputes and wars happening right now, it's not surprising that World War III might even start tomorrow.